Hey everyone, it's Zach with Palantir Research. Palantir is already partnering with the most prestigious and largest players in this industry, and it will amount to hundreds of millions in revenue, if not billions of revenue over time. Healthcare is poised for the AI market to grow to around $28 billion by 2024, but projecting up to $188 billion by 2030. Honestly, these numbers are not surprising to me, maybe even a little smaller, but for those who don't know, I do work as a healthcare data analyst and have been in different areas in healthcare throughout my career, from doing claims auditing for clients when I consulted, to building out data integration pipelines for ERP systems for large healthcare systems, and today, building analytical pipelines, but niche down to that dialysis patient side. But yeah, enough about me. AIPCon is going to have a lot of healthcare players: Cleveland Clinic, HCA Healthcare, Cardinal Health, Tampa Bay General, and Siemens Healthineers. I've got a previous video on Cleveland Clinic actually, so check that out after if you're interested. They're one of the major presenters that I'm actually excited to see, but today's video will actually focus on Cardinal Health. And for those outside of the healthcare industry, they're a major supplier in the country when it comes to medical supplies and pharmaceuticals. So starting with their financials, because this really shows how big they are, they have a $20 billion market cap from their stock, but you'll be surprised to see from their latest earnings, they did almost $50.5 billion in revenue. And remember, this is on a quarterly basis. So that doesn't make sense maybe for some of you, but after all is said and done though, they are left with only $345 million in net income for the quarter. So seeing that top line first, you wonder why they're only $20 billion, but then you realize how expensive it is to run their business and to operate. Plus, it's not necessarily a growth industry like tech. Now, you don't necessarily need to be in healthcare to know why healthcare costs are so high, and in the United States, they're rising, but the financials here especially show just a small snippet and why the system is so top-heavy when it comes to revenue, but nothing at the end of the barrel in net income. So even in my own work, won't say the company, but essentially we'll have a top line of billions of dollars, and you're fighting for these single-digit net income margins, or single-digit percentages at the end of the day. And don't get me started on hospitals and health systems. You'll see their billions or hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue, and they'll still end up losing money. Healthcare is a big business, but you're not necessarily sitting on a ton of earnings after all of your expenses. But anyone in the know, there has been a lot of consolidation overall in healthcare because you really can't survive as a small practitioner or small business with razor-thin margins. And plus, it does get complicated with the governance and regulations, but I digress. Now, back in the beginning of the year, we have Cardinal Health and Palantir announcing their partnership. When this came out, I was excited because we usually think of health systems like the NHS, Tampa Bay General, and Cleveland Clinic, who are doing very important research and providing care, but there's a whole network running behind the scenes for healthcare as an industry. If Palantir showcases a major health insurance payer in the future, I think that would be very interesting as well, and I'd be curious to see on the kind of work they'd be doing, since I have worked heavily in this area as well and have audited them for clients. But onto the partnership itself back in January, it is mentioned they were already trying to bring together artificial intelligence and machine learning to run on customers' purchasing and consumption data for pharmaceuticals in order to basically improve utilization and meet inventory needs correctly when it comes to drugs. So I actually worked in a pharmacy back in college as a tech, and the logistics around pharmaceuticals does get a bit complicated when you have all these different name brand medicines, generics, the different insurance coverage, and how you manage your inventory amongst all your stores in a certain area. And sometimes you'd have to send patients to other stores just because you're not holding that drug there. But I'd assume Cardinal Health would be working alongside these kind of retail purchasers and probably hospitals as well to get improved inventory management. There have been horror stories I've actually heard from my mother, who's a nurse, where you've run out of a certain medicine when it's found out a whole supply of something has expired and they just have to throw it away. It'd be unsafe to actually administer that to patients. So things and horror stories of that have happened at hospitals, and it can literally cost lives and tons of money and time. Moving on though, Peter J. Ciavalis does go on to say they're trying to be proactive in pharmaceutical decision support to try to address rising drug costs, volatility, and shortages. Of course, it's all about the patients in the press releases, but there's a huge real cost when it comes to money that comes here that is taking a chunk out of their bottom line, and we saw that in their financials just from their latest quarterlies. So when they present at AIPCon, I suspect they will focus on the pharmaceutical supply chain side and how their current processes, or the old ones, quote unquote, worked, but then the supply chain shocks of the pandemic really switched things up, especially as hospitals closed off services to non-COVID patients, and there was probably a lot of pharmaceuticals that either went to waste, and also when things started to reopen, How are they trying to be smart about refulfilling orders everywhere and resupplying their medicines? I wouldn't be surprised if this is the narrative, and this is a huge opportunity though for Palantir, as you can imagine. With a top line like $50 billion per quarter, and they're only making a few hundred million per year, if Palantir can showcase savings of billions of dollars that can actually go directly down to the bottom line, or at least to their operating margin, that at least would earn them a few tens of millions at the minimum, I'd say, if not hundreds of millions over time in the future. It just depends how they can actually drive value and perform for Cardinal Health, and they are a really big behemoth where this is an opportunity to really embed yourself into the healthcare system. With artificial intelligence already being the story, and this is earlier back in January with that press release, Cardinal Health, I think, is poised very good to have the conditions of really using AI smartly, because I'm biased to thinking that gaining efficiencies and cutting costs will be easier when you're implementing AI than to improve something that, will help you grab more revenue from the market. It's not necessarily guaranteed, and you don't have full control over it as much as something like your costs, but that's just my opinion. And the other thing here with Cardinal Health being so large and supplying all these different health systems as well as pharmacies probably across the nation is that maybe this is your in throughout the rest of the healthcare industry, right? So not necessarily you're going to embed yourself into these organizations and customers as well, but maybe there'll be some sort of customer data sharing here that takes place. And this, of course, will help Palantir perform much, much better for Cardinal Health. And maybe it can show those clients of Cardinal Health that Palantir is really working and doing a good job, and may actually persuade them to take on Palantir themselves in order to create this self-reinforcing loop of improving the services from their provider like Cardinal Health, but also improving their ordering system to be more efficient in ordering from Cardinal Health themselves. So it's going to be working on both ends, right? So if you're supplying efficiently, but you're also ordering efficiently, this is going to really create cost savings as well as timing things where you're not going to be wasting as much. You're going to be getting the correct amount of inventory for what you need. And if you're going to be having multiple locations for your health system or your retail locations, you're going to be able to supply the correct places with the correct amount at the right time. So that's really going to reinforce how Palantir can get throughout the healthcare industry, but this does rely heavily on execution. I know this can be a stretch, especially if it may take so much time to actually do this over time, but we might be seeing the seeds sown here at AIPCon when Cardinal Health speaks, and I hope they are going to show that Palantir is really strong for them and helping bring real improvements to healthcare, not only for their costs as a business, but to patients across the country. But let me know your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next video.